You could imagine him winning an Albert Bartlett but doing absolutely nothing after. Hello and welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel. What a weekend of action we had at Cheltenham and Aintree, and a profitable one as well. At the Friday, my best bet of the day came in Annual and Victorson. On the Friday, your best bet came in. Also, third time Lucki won the Novices Chase and looked very impressive doing so. And on the Saturday, both of our best bets didn't run, unfortunately. That was a bit of dampener, but the action was very good over the weekend and duly made up for it. On this episode of Let's Talk Racing, we'll be going through the weekend's racing, those two horses in particular, Barderstown Lad and Third Time Lucki. We'll also be looking towards the Irish, a heck of a good weekend over in Ireland.
Can't wait to get back into it. I always feel Dan Royal's probably the hallmark of the start of the season in Irish racing. You guys have your Chepstows and Cheltenham October meetings. Dan Royal is where we really get kick-started into it, and that first grade one of the season, and it looks a mouth-watering clash as well between last year's Gold Cup winner and a few other really good horses that'll be ready to go on their first start of the season. So it should be fantastic action, some really good horses running, and fingers crossed we can back a couple of winners this weekend.
Looking forward to it. The few races that we'll be previewing are the WKD Hurdle on the Friday, the Champion Chase on the Saturday, the return of Envoi Allen in the Grade 2 on the Saturday. We'll also be looking at Ascot and Wetherby, the likes of the West Yorkshire Hurdle and the Charlie Hall Chase, and then our just best bets for the weekend as well. So hopefully you enjoy. So we'll start on the Friday of Cheltenham, and I think the one horse that we should mention is Third Time Lucki, who was very impressive. You were a doubter before going into it, and I think I was as well. I think I had almost given up hope. So it was very nice seeing him dot up at Cheltenham. He was very free in the early stages, but he did jump like a buck. And we kind of said before in the podcast that if he jumps as well as Skelton's novice chasers have in the last few years, then he should take all the beating. He found himself in front after 4 flights, and I think Harry just had to get round on him. Once he hit the front, the writing was on the wall. He just had to get him home, and it was very easy in the end. It was very comfortable. You'd have to say that the form is questionable. Fidelio Vallis, who's rated 148 going into the race, ran no sort of race, and I think that's a fine example of great handicapping by the British handicapper, where a horse has got Sky Racing after running a few Mickey Mouse races in the summer. And the plan looks like it's going to the Arkle trial for Third Time Lucki, then on to the Henry VIII, and then I reckon he'll probably have a break, go on to the Kingmaker, and then go to the Arkle. What did you make of the performance solely on Friday?
Yeah, it was a good performance. Look, he's jumped absolutely superbly, which again, as I said when we were talking about Brave Man's Game a few weeks ago, that's what you're really looking for in your first start or 2 starts over fences. And for him to run around a place like Cheltenham, which is often so difficult to jump for a novice, and put in a real near faultless round was really impressive. And the fact that he jumped his way to the front was also impressive. That being said, he's been able to do that because the race has fallen apart, as you say. Fidelio Vallis was jumping out to his right, has ran no race. Any News, his main market rival, didn't jump a twig out the back and was labouring from a long way out. And Buddy Rich for Gordon Elliott, A, is probably a little bit limited, and B, is probably being plotted at a handicap down the line. I don't think they're trying too much with him, because Third Time Lucki was around 10 lengths clear turning in, and Davy Russell sitting in second on the snaff still. So I don't know what the story was there. He might be one to follow. But Third Time Lucki, he's done it really well. Did people get a little bit overexcited? Probably so. I can see why. It's a little bit of English King syndrome. First good novice chaser we've seen this year. People are getting, maybe a little bit ahead of themselves. But he's done it really well, and I would say he's still got a lot of winning to do this year, and probably will have a very good chance when it comes to that sort of Sandown Grade 1.
It fills me with happiness that you're saying that. But it's true. I think you do have to tame your enthusiasm, because you look at the British horses that are in the anti-post market for the Arkle, and the second best after Third Time Lucki would be My Drogo. There's no way in hell that Dan Skelton would run them against each other, and My Drogo definitely wants further. Goshen stays hurdling. Montmirail goes to the fighting fifth, so you'd have to imagine something would have to go horribly wrong in the fighting fifth for him to then go chasing. And then if something went horribly wrong in the fighting fifth, would you fancy him for the Arkle? Probably not. Duzart, he needs a trip and he's staying hurdling. So I definitely think that it's such a weak division over here that he could easily go to the November meeting, win, go to Sandown, win a Grade 1, go to the Kingmaker, win, and then go into the Arca with a string of ones by his name, but then be firmly put in his place because he's not really faced a proper challenge. He's still got to do that. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does this season. If he does go to those races and if he does win, then you never know. He might improve and he might be in there with an each way shout. I still think he's got plenty to find with the likes of Fernie Hollow if he goes chasing. Appreciate it with that Supreme Novices Hurdle win. If he takes defences, nothing will be stopping him over 2 miles this season. So it's intriguing, it was impressive, and it's the ideal starting point, and I'm sure the Skeltons are very excited, but you do have to tame your enthusiasm a bit. Barnestown Lad, though, 50-1 for the Bartlett. You put him up before. I think he's now about 33-1. He won I've no idea how. I was on the second, and it hurt. It just was not going past.
No, not at all. And it was a funny race to watch, I must say. Halfway round, I thought I'd put everyone onto an absolute donkey, really. He was being scrubbed along. He was scruffy with his obstacles. And you just didn't feel he was travelling with any sort of enthusiasm, which is what he has been doing a little bit over in Ireland, but not to this extent. And it was only at around kind of the turn down the hill at around the 5 furlong out point where Sean Bowen managed to kind of galvanise him a bit and got him rolling down the hill on the outside. And I think it was a race winning move, his move after the second last jump to slightly come in. He slightly hemmed in Harry Skelton on Dragon Bones. As a result, Skelton had to sit and suffer and probably lost a length in the process and couldn't get it back. But Bardenstown Lad, I couldn't believe it. He'd been scrubbed along, he was scruffy, he was doing everything wrong, and yet at the line he's pricking his ears knowing that he's got the job done by a length and a half. So he's one of these funny horses, again, not dissimilar to Third Time Lucki. You have to think about it and go, he's got to improve still an awful lot for him to be involved in any sort of novice hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. But at the same stage, he's battle hardened. You know he stays the trip very well, and there'll be plenty of horses that will go into that race without those two boxes ticked. So therefore, he is somebody you might want to keep on side. I would say similarly enough to Third Time Lucki, he'll be put away for a break now and probably be brought out potentially for the 2 mile 6 race at the Dublin Racing Festival before maybe a tilt at the Albert Bartlett in March. I think he's probably booked his plane ticket after that win.
He's just that slow staying type that it's just ideal for an Albert Bartlett. The unflashy warriors that, like you mentioned, Martello Tower, you mentioned it on the podcast, so do go listen to that if you haven't already. We also talked about the Stayers Hurdle division. You can imagine him winning an Albert Bartlett but doing absolutely nothing after. Let's then move on to the weekend preview, and like we mentioned earlier, a brilliant weekend of action starts on the Friday in the WKD Hurdle at Down Royal. Jeff Kidder, who has actually got a Greatwood Hurdle entry, which is interesting, has had 2 runs on the flat so far. He comes back over hurdles after winning a Grade 1 at Punchestown last year, and he also won at the Cheltenham Festival. And Zanahiyr also in the race. Quilixios was entered, but he is not eligible for the race, so he was removed pretty quickly. I think he won a French hurdle race in France in March 2020. Zanahiyr, the way that they talked him up last season going into the Triumph, you'd imagine that he might be slightly classier at his very best.
I would just like to hope, and I don't know whether I'm, pie in the sky stuff at the moment, but I'd just like to hope that Zanahiyr is a better horse than Jeff Kidder, and as a result, even though he's lacking race fitness, he just outclasses them. And we've seen that sometimes with Gordon Elliott horses in this race before, where they're just a little bit too classy. He might need the run, he might blow up, and as a result you might get a Jeff Kidder or maybe even a Teupo running a big race as well. But I'd like to hope out of this 7 that are entered that Zanahiyr is the best of them.
This is a no-bet race for me. The one concern with Zanahiyr is the rumoured that he's a stayer and that he could even be campaigned down the Stayers Hurdle route. What do you make of him starting out at 2 miles?
Yeah, I think he's got more speed than people think. I can understand that rationale with the way he's finished his races at both Cheltenham and Punchestown, especially Punchestown when looking a little bit outpaced turning in and then rattling home. But Punchestown is a very speedy 2 mile track. It's probably the closest Irish equivalent to maybe the 2 mile track at Kempton rather than the 2 mile track at Cheltenham sort of thing. It's a flat right-handed track and it's also a downhill finish, so it wouldn't play into his Zanahiyr's strengths. I think he just needs a staying 2 miles at the moment, and Down Royal will be a test of that. And fingers crossed. I think he's well worth a shot again at 2 miles, and if it doesn't work, then I'd be stepping up in trip.
The next big race comes on the Saturday, and it is the first Grade 1 of the season, the Champion Chase over 3 miles, and there is an English raider in there in Frodon for trainer Paul Nicholls. He's the sole English challenger, but the last winner to come over and take this race was in 2012, and it was Corto Stone, so not a great record for us. Obviously we sent Clanders over there in recent years. In the race also we've got Galvin. This is a big step up for him, and then the Gold Cup winner Manella Rindo. I'm going to let you take the floor.
Yeah, hard race. Obviously Frodon's got we will probably shape the race really with the way he runs and the way he jumps, and obviously if you look back at his record right-handed and his win in the King George last year, when he got out in front and got into that sort of rhythm, he can be pretty hard to peg back. I'm not sure in this race. Obviously we're here before full entry, so I'd just be a little bit dubious whether Manella Rindo will actually start off his campaign here or not. It would be brilliant if he was to, and obviously Henry's now got potentially 3 Gold Cup prospects on his hands, so he'll have to find races for all of them, and maybe this is the starting point. But if Frodon is fitting well, which I can't believe Paul Nicholls is going to send Frodon over without him being, ready to strike.
He did say at Chepstow yesterday in an interview that Frodon was fully ready. He's had the work done, likewise with Surname that goes through the Charlie Hall, so they'll definitely be going over there battle fit.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether he'll get a few of these off the bridle. I can't really see the angle behind Galvin, personally speaking, at this level. I think he's a good horse, I think he's an improving horse, but he just doesn't do it for me. I'm still yet to be convinced. The horse that I'd love to see run a big race is Road to Respect, actually. I think everything's in place for him to run. He's the type of horse that wins at Down Royal in this type of race. He's a 167 rated horse, bear in mind, but yet has never really put himself into a Gold Cup picture. I think the best he's finished is 5th in a Gold Cup, and he's the type of horse. He has won this race before, he's won a Lexus before. He's a really, really nice type, and if he's able to run, to his best or anywhere near his best, he might be able to run a decent race at a decent price. So I'd like to see Road to Respect run well. I'd like to see Frodon get them at it and really test a lot of stamina, maybe test a little bit of fitness of these top horses as well. So it's a really intriguing race. If I was to have a small bet in it, it would be on Road to Respect.
Road to Respect, are you not concerned after the 600-day break?
Yeah, you'd have to be, but I just can't believe that Noel Meade won't have him to the minute for this race if he's declaring him, and I think the plan, as I say, is for him to run, that they'll have him to the minute to try and run a really big race. And sometimes you get on after these massive absences, they actually run very well first time out, and then they potentially bounce second time, which is an angle that some people love to get stuck into. But Road to Respect, yeah, there's obviously caveats to it, but he's a really good horse in his own right, and especially if Manella Rindo comes out of that race, it becomes a lot more open.
I know this is quite boring, but this is simply a watch for me. Frodon, you need to see him, and you would like to think that he will be fit and he will go from the front, so he'll make it a test. Manella Rindo, will he run? If he does, how fit will he be? Galvin's had the run, but is he quite good enough? We'll learn a heck of a lot about him, and the likes of Road to Respect and others in the race. If they were to win, it wouldn't be a shock. So for this race specifically, I'll keep my powder dry. In the following race, Envoi Allen runs in the Join Racing TV Chase, the Grade 2 over 2.5 miles. A big smile there with the affiliation. The big threat looks like it's Cocoa Beach for Gordon, but when big threat, if the Punchestown Envoi Allen turns up, he's a big threat. If any other Envoi Allen turns up, except from Cheltenham, you suspect it's not much of a threat. He was the highest profile departure from Gordon's. He moved to Henry de Bromhead's, and something just was not right. He was on his toes pre-race in the marsh, and then he fell, and that was a brutal fall, and I'm sure anti-post punters were in the mud. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because this field is far from vintage. We're not going to learn a heck of a lot about Envoi Allen if he was to win. What does he need to show us for us to get an indication that he's back near his best?
I think we just need to see him back jumping and enjoying himself as well. As you say, that Punchestown run was really disconcerting, actually, having been such a lovely jumper of a fence. He was clouting fences, he was stretching for some, he was getting in tight to others, he just didn't look right. and obviously he's had his surgery and he's back and he's hopefully ready to go. I think you just want to see him do similar enough to what he did at Down Royal last year, which was kind of to maybe even dictate from the front, jump well, and maybe show that little bit of toe that we've become used to seeing of him before obviously those two blips in his last two runs. As you say though, I can see it happening where he might go and win by 4 or 5 lengths, cosy enough, and Twitter will implode. And you do have to bear in mind just what he's beating here if he does go and beat it, because Cocoa Beach is a 3 mile 5 horse, and the rest of them aren't up to a whole pile really at grade 2 level. So it's a race he should win. If I'm being honest, it's a race I think he will win, but I think you just have to, again, it's a little bit like third time lucky. You're entitled to be excited. You're entitled to be, glad to maybe see a horse come back and look like his old self. But in terms of the long run, you have to be a little bit, temper the enthusiasm, because it is a pretty poor race on paper.
But I do hope that the Envoi Allen, the superstar that we've seen in the past, does turn up, wins by half the track, and then my Ryanair slip looks slightly better. But let's move on then to Ascot, and we're not going to go through every single race or any specific race, but any fancies that we have on the card. Have you got one specifically?
Yeah, I do. I have one in the 210 race. It's a handicap hurdle, and quite like Gary Moore's horse in this natural history. He's around 5 to 1, 6 to 1. I think that's not a bad bet. I don't think we've seen the best of this horse over hurdles just yet. He was decent enough last year. He got beaten closely in a few decent enough novice hurdles and then won at Plumpton by half the track. He then subsequently disappointed on heavy ground at Sandown before getting beat again at short odds the last time out. He's the type of horse that he's been running on either good ground or heavy ground and probably wants a little bit in between, and he's getting good to soft on Saturday, which I think should be ideal. Gary Moore's horses have been in decent enough form. He's well weighted off a mark of 125, and I think at a 5 to 1, 6 to 1 price, he's not a bad each way bet.
I've actually got a couple. The first being Grey Diamond. Now, he's entered up in 2 races at the Novices Handicap Chase, which is worth £6,000, and the Listed Handicap Chase, which is worth 23. I wouldn't particularly fancy him if he was to go for the Listed Handicap Chase, but if he was to go for the Novice, I would be quite keen. It would be his last run as a novice because he won a race over fences in March. He has chasing experience, he's won over fences, and he's coming up against a lot of first timers in this Novice Handicap Chase, and I think there's definitely more to come off 133. Sam Thomas has had a brilliant weekend with Before Midnight last week, and you suspect that Sam Twiston-Davis would be on here as well, and he's only got to carry 10 stone too, where I think in the listed race he's got to carry almost 11 stone. So Grey Diamond, if he was to run in the first race at Ascot on Saturday, then he would be the fancy. Not so much if he runs in the Listed Handicap Chase. And then also another one, fullback for Gary Moore, funnily enough, a 16 to 1 for the London Gold Cup. He was good on his first 2 runs last season, and he's had the pipe opener at Chepstow. He finished 7th creditably. Chepstow definitely wouldn't suit him. Gary Moore gets these horses jumping well at the likes of a Fontwell, a Sandown and Ascot. Funny enough, he's been to Ascot once before. He was pulled up. He didn't jump particularly well, but his jumping at Chepstow was much better than it was last season, so it seems like he's done plenty of schooling. He's definitely got the ability to win off that mark, and I think I'm going to forgive him for that Ascot run, and 16 to 1 each way could be a big price in the London Gold Cup if he was to run. Another race on Saturday at Ascot we should mention is the Novices Hurdle, purely because Good Risk at All is entered. Now I do want to put this bumper on screen. He's entered against Shall We Have One More, who was an impressive winner at Kempton. He beat Walking on Air of Nicky Henderson's, and Nicky Henderson liked that horse a lot. He couldn't believe he was beaten and thought the winner was particularly smart. But Good Risk at All won a listed Newbury bumper, and if you look at the form, it's turning out really nicely. 5th was Mai Tai for Harry Fry. He won at Newton Abbot last week. 4th was Bill Baxter. I think he'll win this week, actually. The day of upload at Foss Class, I think he'll win comfortably. The 3rd, Gelino Bello, won the 2.5 mile Aintree Novices Hurdle. And the 2nd, I Like to Move It, who won the Holdings Hurdle. So that form is really stacking up. I think Good Risk at All could be pretty good, and could be one that in the same colours as El Dancer, that goes down the Betfair Hurdle route before potentially running in a Supreme Novices Hurdle. He would be one I'd earmark from this side of the Irish Sea. Let's move over to Wetherby, and we've got 2 big races there. The West Yorkshire Hurdle, Paisley Park entered. I think his best days are behind him, and it's interesting actually. I heard through the grapevine that Emma Lavelle was keen to go chasing with him this season, and Andrew Gemmell not so much. Interesting that he is going to run here. She said it in a stable tour in the week. So Paisley Park, I think If he runs well here, he'll stay over hurdles. If he doesn't, he'll go chasing, and that might reignite some of the old spark that we saw. Thomas Darby's in there. He definitely has the potential to make up into a really nice staying hurdle type, but I've not seen it yet. I'm yet to be convinced, and if he was to run well, I think Ollie would be really pleased. Master Tommy Tucker, he clouts fences for fun. He's only ever had two runs over hurdles, and he has won both of them, so they're reversing to hurdles. He could be a really smart staying hurdle chance. Wouldn't be my idea of the winner. I would quite like Indefatigable if she was to run. She'll go under the radar, and she always has through her whole career. She won a Martin Pipe. She'll definitely stay. She likes Wetherby, and she's had the run on the flat. She won about a month ago. I think she'll go close regardless. Is this a watch, or are you going to have a bet in this?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a bet on an outsider in this race if she comes over. The Charles Burns horse, Run for Oscar. I think it's a really open race, and I think she's a mare on the improve at the moment. She's won her last two. She won really impressively at the Listowel Harvest Festival, over 2.5. Granted in handicap company, but she deserves this step up in grade, I believe. As I say, I would have your same fears about some of those horses at the top of the market. Not sure about Paisley Park. Thomas Darby is a really nice horse, a horse I'd like to go very well, but again, slightly flashes to deceive with his jumping at times, and I'm not so sure that this horse even properly stays 3 miles, so we're going to have to see that over time. I can see your point behind Indefatigable, but I think Run for Oscar is not a dissimilar type mare on the improve. I think there's been a bit of money around for her, and she's now around 14, 16 to 1 for Charles Burns. So if she comes over, Charles Burns doesn't really bring them over to England for any old tricks either, so there might be a bit of money around for her on the day as well, and I think she's not a bad each way bet.
The next race is the Charlie Hall Chase, and Surname is favourite. He goes well fresh, and like Frodon, he'll be fully ready. Chamblou runs, who's got a great record around Wetherby. I think it reads 2-1-1. Won both of his early novice chases there last season. He'll be an interesting runner. Do you think it's between these two, or can another horse feature here?
No, I'd say it's between the two. This was a race that didn't really inspire me, I must confess. Having a look at the entries, it was just a disappointment. We've obviously seen some really good Charlie Hall chases over the past number of years, but it's hard to get excited, I find, about Surname these days. You almost know what you're going to get. He's going to be impressive on Saturday, then we won't see him for the rest of the season. He'll get beat in AYB, so it's just, with those sort of horses, I know we had this slight feeling when we watched the Persian War, say, at Chepstow, with Comprand, and you're there going, it was a very impressive performance, and it was visually taking, but is he going to do anything come the end of the season? And it's a little bit kind of disappointing when you think that they won't, and it's the same with Surname. Chamblou's been similar. He's been really good at the start of seasons and then tailed off a little bit after Christmas. If I was to have a bet, I'd probably back Chamblou, but it's probably a race I'll be keeping a wide berth and have a cup of tea during.
I am in agreement. I'll be backing Chamblou as well at the bigger price to beat Surname, purely because his record around Wetherby is very good. He jumps very well, and you suspect that he could go from the front. So if Surname isn't 100%, or he has one of those days where he doesn't turn up, Chamblou will be there mopping things up. A few youngsters I think worth mentioning over the weekend. Jerry Cologne runs in a maiden hurdle. Phil Daw is a juvenile that I need to put on your radar. I know that Gordon Elliott Camp are very keen on him. He was disappointed with Ibarik de Soy last week. I was as well. I'd actually backed him for the Triumph Hurdle going into that, and he didn't look particularly good whatsoever. Finished second. You'd suspect he'll come on for the run, but he won't be winning a Triumph Hurdle. I think their next best would be Phil Daw. Be interested to see what he does in the first race at Down Royal on Saturday. And Hollow Games is there, American Mike, that Gordon Elliott potential champion bumper horse has entered up throughout the weekend. Mighty Potter's also entered up. Porticello, interestingly, on Sunday, that Gary Moore horse, he beat Magistrato in France. Can he be the next Goshen, etc. LA Belle for Dan Skelton, she's favourite for the Mares Novices Hurdle. And then another one as well, Shanti Classico in the bumper at Ascot on Saturday. I know that Kim Bailey likes this horse, a point-to-point winner. I won't be backing him, but he could be a smart horse for the future. So one for the tracker. A brilliant weekend of racing. If you were going to pin your hopes to one horse throughout the weekend, what would it be?
Well, a race we haven't gone through yet is the handicap hurdle at Down Royal. I put this horse up I think a week or two ago as a horse to maybe watch out for. Cheltenham handicap. Easky Lane runs in it. and I'm going to be going to the well and going to war with this horse all year, because I think he's well handicapped. It's the race before the Ladbrokes Champion Chase, and I think he should run a very big race. And obviously, just I want to get it in. Jeremy's Jewel out again this weekend, and we're looking for heavy amounts of justice. She's in the Mares Novices Hurdle, the listed race at Down Royal on the Friday. I don't think she'll end up going there. I think she'll go to a Mares Maiden Hurdle at Cork on Sunday. She should win.
And then mine would be Grey Diamond if he was to run in that first race at Ascot on Saturday. Hopefully this weekend can be as good as last weekend with the likes of Annual Invictus, Barnestown Lad. I like to move it, and hopefully we can keep up that good form. Thank you very much for watching. If you do enjoy this video, please hit that like button, and if you're not yet subscribed, join the 11,780 odd who are subscribed, and it's going up every day. Thank you very much for the support, and we'll see you soon.